Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everyone, my name is Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today I have Maddie from the office with me. Hi Maddie.
Hi everyone, I hope we're well.
So Maddie, today we're going to be talking about some recent changes, the most recent changes that have come out from the NDIS that went into effect last week on the 3rd of October. Do you want to run us through what those changes are?
Yeah, of course. So just a basic overview. One of the main things that's happening is that there has been a bit of a change that I guess is causing a little bit of concern, and I can see the concerns, but the NDIS are changing a few things around as far as participants can only spend NDIS funds on things that are in the approved list of NDIS supports that can be found on the NDIS website. And then they cannot spend NDIS funding on things in the list of non-NDIS supports. This change, it does make it clear what NDIS funding can and can't be spent on, and will help participants make informed choices about using their NDIS funding. However, I guess my concern is, Debbie, that is this going to make it more confusing for participants, or is it actually going to help? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I feel about it, but I just feel like things are just getting a little more confusing. That's my perspective, but
okay, yeah. Well, look, I've had a look through the lists of what have now been classified or clarified as being NDIS supports and supports that are not NDIS supports. To me, it does kind of look actually quite common sense in a way. I guess anything in general that you would have to spend money on in your life anyway, anyone would, such as day-to-day living costs of accommodation, food and groceries, clothing, alternative and complementary therapies, school education, employment, transport costs that anyone would incur in their normal day-to-day life are not an NDIS support. And to me, that seems fair. That seems probably quite as it should be. Whereas I'm looking through the list of what is an NDIS support. And to me, this is all the sort of stuff that I recognise anyway as being NDIS supports. Do you want to maybe just run through that list of all of the different supports that are classified as funded NDIS supports?
yes. So we've got accommodation assistance or tenancy assistance, assistance animals, the funding to provide for those assistant animals, assistance in coordinating or managing life stages, transitions and supports, assistance to access and maintain employment or higher education, assistance with daily life tasks in a group or shared living environment, assistance with travel or transport arrangements, assistive equipment for recreation, assistive products for household tasks, assistive products for personal care and safety, communication and information equipment, community nursing care, customised prosthetics that includes orthotics, daily personal activities, development of daily care and life skills, disability-related health supports, early intervention supports for early childhood, exercise physiology and personal wellbeing activities, group and centre-based activities and much, much more. Of course, you've got your support coordination, specialised driver training, vehicle modifications, vision equipment, therapeutic supports. There's lots of things on this list. And then another good thing I did notice is in the document that says supports that are NDIS supports, even if there's stuff in the supports that are not NDIS supports, there is potential to still access those supports in there with the right evidence and reports from your health practitioners. So that is a good thing. It doesn't mean that, it's an absolute no. It just means that you need to, again, and same as always, you need to collect the correct evidence from your occupational therapist, speech pathologist, whoever it may be, in order to receive those supports. Now, they're saying that instead of having NDIS plans itemized out, they're creating it so it's one big budget, meaning that if there is something that you need that is not stated in your NDIS plan, you may still be able to utilize those funds for those purpose, obviously, again, with the right evidence. But it could make it a little bit simpler. It could make it a little bit easier to access things that are seen as reasonable and necessary.
Yeah. Look, that's the way I've looked at this when I just had a brief overview of everything that's come out. And again, to go back to the supports that are not NDIS supports, to me it makes sense. So if I'm looking at finance and payments related, donations, tithes, gifts and political contributions, fines, penalties and court-ordered amounts, travel insurance, life insurance, of course they shouldn't be an NDIS support. No one else gets assistance for that. It's not related to their disability.
That's right. It's not directly related to the disability, yeah.
Yeah, food and groceries, lifestyle-related, cigarettes, vapes, gambling, internet devices.
That's sort of always been the case too, I guess. Yeah.
So I'm not really wondering how much, obviously you'd have more of a understanding come from your support coordination background on what has actually changed here, or is it just simply the clarification?
And that's, I guess, one of the things that could be found as confusing is, as a participant, do you look at this and go, this is more change? It's a very overwhelming sense of, wow, does this mean that everything's going to change? Is my NDIS plan going to change? There's a lot of confusion around it, but I guess that's why it's good to have people like what we're doing now is sitting down and clarifying exactly what this is. One other thing I do want to mention is there will be a 12-month transition period for the NDIS support listed. So during this period, if a participant makes a mistake and purchases a non-NDIS support, the NDIA will not raise a debt. For the first or second mistakes made, 1, if the support is worth less than $1,500, and 2, where a provider is delivering or claiming for services on a participant's behalf, for example, a plan manager, the transition period is 30 days. So this is not happening, it's being brought out as of the 3rd of October, but, this is going to be a transition period as well. Nothing's going to happen. The NDIS have always stood by it. Nothing happens when they bring something out. Nothing happens then and there. There is a transition period where we they get used to everything, and they get everyone used to it, and they are there to support everyone along the way with all these changes as well.
Yeah, so it's a new change. It's a new guidelines, I guess. And whilst it might, as every change that comes out, be of concern and cause stress to some participants, in my mind, this is just really a clarification of what is common sense anyway. As you said, if they are claiming for something that ultimately is not an NDIS support, there is a period of time for that to be, I guess, for the participants and whoever is involved, their family members or carers, their supports, to understand why it's not a support and other ways of accessing similar kinds of supports that are. So there was actually something else that came out too with it on replacement support. So just a little additional line that basically is saying supports that are not NDIS supports may be considered replacement supports in certain circumstances. And this is really only when we're talking about certain day-to-day living items and also things like technology. So consumables, assistive technology. So like, for example, participants who require the use of a smartwatch, tablet or smartphone required to meet communication and accessibility needs. So that support may be considered as a replacement support.
And then, of course, you've got your standard commercially available household items as well. Yeah, the thing is there must be clear evidence that the need for the item relates specifically to the impairment that meets the disability or early intervention requirements.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think, it's just one of many things that will come out from the NDIS over the next year or two, leading on from the larger review that is almost, 10 months ago now, that came out, and we've seen quite a lot of changes come through. So slowly they are addressing different items there, and there obviously has been a lot of rorting. We know that within the system, and claiming supports that are not right and are not fair to other people within the NDIS that are not claiming those supports, or just, that are generally things that no one else in the community either has assistance for if it's not related to a condition of physical or cognitive impairment or whatever. So, yeah, whilst we know that every change comes out does cause consternation and concern, I think that there's nothing that's too much causing red flags here for me just reading through this. It looks like it's pretty much just kind of common sense.
Yeah. But just to, I guess, clarify for these big changes, so NDIS Supports introduces a definition of NDIS supports that can be funded by the NDIS and declared by the NDIS rules to be NDIS supports. So plans approved after the law comes into effect will have total funding amounts, funding component amounts, and funding periods. This clarifies the amount of funds available in the plan and how long the funds need to last. So for anyone confused, please refer to the NDIS website. There are 2 separate documents. I think there's actually a third. There is supports that are NDIS supports that are not NDIS supports, and supports that are not NDIS supports that may be considered replacement supports. Please refer to those if there's any confusion around what is and is not included in NDIS plans now.
Yeah, and I guess just to wrap up, you did talk about the funding has changed in terms of it being a lump sum now. We've delved into that concept in the past, following on from the NDIS review last year, and how it may ultimately relate to care funding, SIL funding and SDA funding. And I guess this is what we did foresee, that participants, rather than having specific items and specific supports being individually funded, they do have more flexibility and ability to change their funding up as they see fit.
Yeah, and I guess one big thing to remember now that this change is coming into place, plan managers and support coordinators are going to be heavily relied on, in my opinion. It's, we've got to be able to stick to the budget within that 12 months and not go over or under. Someone's got to be able to keep track of how that spending is going.
And how does that fit in with the whole NDIS the review recommendation that support coordinators and plan managers eventually be phased out?
That's right.
And taken over by navigators?
That's right. That's again, yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well, Debbie. All right.
Yeah.
Well, tune in next time. We might cover that topic. I don't know.
Yeah. So, as always, lots of changes going down in the NDIS world. And we do try to keep on top of them. So any last thoughts, Maddie?
No, but I hope everyone has a lovely week.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you. And we'll see all you guys next time.
Thank you. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.